just summarizes that agenda. Oh, thanks, Megan. And we'll record this and share it with anyone who couldn't make it. Ah, yes. So yeah, we'll talk about the what, why, and how. And just to further introduce myself a little more, I'm Lainey Signer. I'm the founder and executive director of Climate Farm School, and I started this program in the summer and fall of 2021, so about 5 years ago now. And it was sort of the brainchild of my dissertation studying food systems at UC Berkeley and my personal interest in teaching and education. I was a middle school teacher before coming out to California from Boston to pursue a PhD in climate change and food systems. And almost every summer during my 5 years of graduate school, I spent working on regenerative diversified farms from Washington to California to my home base back on the East Coast. And that my very first summer farming just really, in an incredible way, transformed my life and opened my eyes to initially my kind of lack of connection to food and where my food came from. I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and spent most of my life in urban and suburban areas, not super connected to spaces of food production. But growing food for a community food system on an island in Washington State really changed how I think about and relate to food for the rest of my life, I think. And I really was curious to create more pathways for people to connect to that type of rooted community food system and really showcase the incredible climate knowledge and learning I was getting on the ground in a sort of a direct experiential way to think about climate change and food systems, which was not always the lens that I was getting in academia. So I found it to be a really amazing complement to farm, do research, pursue other coursework. And yeah, after finishing my PhD, it was 2020, it was the pandemic. So there was no sort of immediate opportunity for in-person climate and food system learning and education. But I was lucky to find a role with a climate education startup called Terra.do. And that's what really got me started teaching climate change to adult professionals. And then about a year after working for them, they kind of enabled me and empowered me to pilot a specific course on regenerative agriculture and climate change that was the first climate farm school pilot. And it was a hybrid of online and on-farm education. And we've sort of stuck with that model and been refining it a little bit over time, but find that it really is an incredible experience to bring small groups of people onto a farm to live and work and eat and build community together. It's a pretty catalytic opportunity for grassroots collective action and sort of the type of climate action that I think we all need that's not alone, but that it's in groups and it's grounded in community. So been excited to work on that and grow our programs and our team. And I'll pass it over to Megan to share sort of her backstory and how she got involved in Climate Farm School.
Thanks, Lainey. Hi. I love seeing all your faces here. So I am newish to the team in my current capacity, but I've actually been cooking for Climate Farm School for almost 3.5 years now. I had a corporate career for about a decade, based in Silicon Valley, and the last role that I held was the CEO of an organization called the Board List, which was focused on placing women and people of color on boards, everything from publicly traded companies, Fortune 100, to privately held, VC-backed, everything from Series A and above, and really thinking about how we could change the culture of work, with better representation at the highest levels. And at the same time, I was baking at home, and I had always had this long, long dream of becoming a professional baker. And so when I helped exit the company in 2023, I finally got to pursue that and started baking professionally in a variety of different places here in Brooklyn and Manhattan. And after about a couple years of doing that, I was also cooking at Climate Farm School courses and feeling like there was such a big disconnection between what I was baking with, the ingredients that were being sourced at these professional bakeries, and really the food system. And a lot of these bakeries make delicious product, but it's still coming from roller milled white sifted flour. And so I started this year of self-study really, and went to California California and studied under Sarah Owens, and then applied for an apprenticeship on a vegetable production farm in upstate New York. And really started to make, all of these connections between how I wanted to bake, where my food was coming from, how I wanted to really relate to the land, which ultimately led me to opening up my own little micro bakery called Grain Dead, where I use freshly milled, organically sourced grains from the Northeast region. We have so much really incredibly interesting things happening in our grain ecosystem here in the Hudson Valley in particular. And then Climate Farm School needed some, additional support specifically in the Hudson Valley and across our overall strategic partnerships. And I felt like it was the perfect intersection of my skill sets from my corporate career, and in alignment with the way that I wanted to be baking and cooking. And I'll talk more about the cooking experience too in a little bit, but it was very serendipitous and meant to be. And so, yeah, here I am today. Jess, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess. I ju also just joined the Climate Farm School team in November. I went to a Climate Farm School course in September at Hidden Villa in Northern California. And it was a really incredible experience, one that l- really ignited all of my passion for the food system. I have been farming since 2008, um, and in many different capacities. And to be in a space where everybody wants to talk about food and farming and building a better food system was just, for me, it was really incredible. I live in Idaho and in a pretty, I live in Boise, which is the capital, but it's still like a pretty rural state. And our food system is not nearly as developed, or evolved as the food systems in Northern California. And so to be able to wake up every day on a farm, a very well-established farm. Hidden Villa has been operating for 100 years now. So it just had so much history, and you could feel that, and so much infrastructure had been built there. Um, and the biggest thing that really that really got to me was all of the connections that we made and the conversations that we had all throughout the day. To be able to wake up and have space to sit and watch the sunrise, to be able to write in my journal, to have this moment of grounding into myself, into the place that we're at, and then as everyone starts waking up and we're making breakfast together in a shared kitchen and having conversations, and it just felt really incredible to just constantly be around people that were interested and passionate in the same things that I was. All of the programming throughout the day was different every day too. So it was like really dynamic, really exciting. Every block of activity, I was excited to go to the next thing. And at the same time, there was space in between everything for you to go on a hike or stretch or lay down and rest, reflect on what we've been learning, or continue your conversations. Kind of in all of the open spaces. So that was sort of like the highlight for me, is making all of these friendships and connections and networking professionally. And then the other highlight was the food. Um, the chefs are so incredible. They're so talented. They come from such a rich background of food culture, and to be in the kitchen with them, learning and cooking beside them felt like such a gift. Something that I would pay for, like a really amazing cooking class, and to be able to create these meals together and then sit down and share the meal together, continue the conversations, deepen the connections, um, not only to each other, but to the food itself. And every ingredient had a story, which was so important to me to like learn about where our chef sourced everything from, what his intention was in that, like the stories that he told around the dishes themselves just felt so intentional and meaningful. And I don't get to experience that in my daily life in the food culture that we have in Boise. There's no place I can go to eat like that. So that had a huge impact on me as well. And just to be welcomed into the kitchen. I love to cook. I cook food every day for my family. But to be with a professional chef that wanted you to be there, that was excited to share his knowledge, just felt so important. And then for him to be as excited to be like, look what I got today, and showing us the ingredients, telling us the stories behind these ingredients, telling us about the farmer that he met when he went to find the food was just a huge highlight for me. And having almost 2 decades of farming experience, it's still so valuable to be on the land, meet new farmers, see what they're doing. I'm always learning. I learned so much while I was there. Just little things that you don't always see or have access to when you're like in your own world, you know? And so I that was a really powerful part of the experience as well. And afterwards I was like, Lainey, please let me be a part of this. I really think I can bring my marketing skills to Climate Farm School, and I'm so just honored and excited to be on the team and to share this with everyone else.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Jess. And yeah, that is a perfect foreshadow of a lot of the sort of like how do we design a program that I'll be walking through and talking through briefly. So yeah, so I think the next piece is kind of the what does the program model look like? Like what is Climate Farm School? So as you've just heard, it's a hybrid program. We have a couple weeks of online programming to meet as a cohort, meet the instructors, meet the chefs. We have 2 Zoom meetings prior to the on-farm week and some online curriculum that we release to all of our participants to just be able to prepare a little bit, look at reading lists, look at content that we've already kind of curated from our experiences running this program. So that just looks like 8 modules of classes that is in an online learning platform. And then, of course, the real nuts and bolts are just our time on the farm together. So we structure the program loosely modeled after some friends of mine who've worked in outdoor recreation industries at UC Santa Cruz and Knowles and Outward Bound to have definitely is centered around experiential learning. So we have usually more hands-on work on the farms in the morning, conversations with soil scientists, and yeah, everyone else in between the farmers, the bakers, the more hands-on components happen in the earlier part of the day. And then in the afternoon, we get into some of the discussion around shifting food systems, shifting food in this country. And we'll get into, towards the end of the week, some models of transformation. How are people building regional food systems and connecting across the land from the farm to the processing, to the distributing, and the consumption and waste processing? So we really take a systems lens to all that we do. And yeah, these are some pictures from our courses in the over the past couple years. And as far as who comes to our courses, that's another big part of how we started, I think, and where we're going. Right now, our courses are our programs that are available online on our website are open to anyone, and we really love that diverse professional audience. It's been really, I think, instrumental to proving the point that it takes all of us to make systems change. Grassroots action happens across all industries and professions and walks of life. So that diversity of like, how can I come in, apply this knowledge, the perspectives of the farmers, and use my skills to plug into systems change is really it just happens while we're in the course weeks, given the diverse perspectives, and I just love that. So we've seen entrepreneurs, investors, funders, people from the tech community, healthcare professionals, farmers, marketers, designers, artists, consultants, chefs, like you name it, they've probably come through our program, teachers of middle school and high school students. Um, and that is, yeah, that's just like, again, just such a beautiful thing. And I think it really one of our final assignments is to create an action plan, a personal food and climate action plan of what are your next steps to build a better food system in starting with your own life, your family, your community, and how can this community that you've just built through Climate Farm School support you in taking those next steps? Um, so yeah, I think that's just like really brought to life. It's in a really embodied way at our current programs. I will also say, as we've done this for a number of years, we're starting to get interest from groups of people or networks or organizations coming together to access our programming. And we have space for that through our host farm network to do custom courses. And we're looking into doing that more intentionally for the healthcare audience, policymakers, and university students whose education on food systems and climate does not usually involve time on the farm and more immersive experiences like what we offer. So if you have any of those backgrounds, maybe reach out to me afterwards and we can talk a little bit more about where our programming is going for those folks. Um, but yeah, this is just a summary of where people came from in our last cohort of the year. It was a really lovely, diverse group. Um, yeah, and then I want to pass it back to Jess to just kind of talk through what a day in the life looked like, kind of applying this template basically to her experience. And so yeah, Jess, if you maybe just want to share about like kind of the day with Jason and now I'm blanking on his wife's name. And yeah, how that all took shape, that would be great.
Yeah, totally. I wake up early, so I was the first one up every day. I made coffee for everyone, which felt really nice, to just have that ready for everybody when they woke up. There's a communal fridge inside the kitchen that's stocked with all kinds of yummy foods that our chef prepares for us, and then like fresh eggs from the farm and all kinds of ingredients, leftovers from dinner, where you can make your own breakfast. We often made like eggs and potatoes and things like that that everyone shared. And then so that day we started by walking up the watershed. There's a creek that runs up the property called Adobe Creek. And Jason is not only an amazing farmer, but a conservation hydrologist, right? And it was so awesome to hear from him about the watershed and how that works. And we did um, a really fun activity where we took a piece of paper and crumpled it up and then unfolded it. And along all the ridge lines, we kind of like drew where the watersheds were. And then he explained how that works, and specifically within their watershed, he talked about the watershed, how it runs down into the aquifer, and how they use that um, to water to irrigate their farm, basically. And something that I really loved were the techniques that he does, like observing and watching the water. He showed us these places where where the water pools, they then dig a hole that allows the water to go back down into the aquifer. Things like that that I found extremely interesting to apply to my own land, and just kind of a really awesome resource because hydrology isn't, I don't know, it's just like not addressed as much in farming as it should be. It's kind of pretty like standard irrigation systems and setups and rainwater catchment and all of that. But to actually see how he had spent decades observing this watershed and finding really beautiful ways to naturally enhance the aquifer on the property to use it to irrigate their fields that oftentimes are like dry farmed a big part of the year because there's not enough rain and precipitation in Northern California. Um, then we and also it's just such a beautiful experience to be in that setting. Like it's the Bay Laurel Forest. So for me, that was really special. Bay doesn't grow here, and it's one of my favorite trees. And so that was just really magical as well. Just the entire setting was really special. And then we come back and um, yeah, we had Lunch, I'm trying to remember that day specifically. Um, but lunch was like buffet style. Gary, the chef, had prepared everything ahead of time and kind of laid it all out for us, and we share lunch together. Um, we also did an animal husbandry piece that day where we got to meet the farmer in charge of the animals, and she talked about their systems there. They were doing some really cool restoration with their fields, planting some really amazing varieties from Australia to try to almost like reforest this pasture, um, which was really, really interesting to me as well. And then she showed us they have like cows that they milk, they had goats that they had put up on the hillsides that were kind of unusable spaces. They're starting to kind of clear those areas. They had um, pigs that had just had piglets, and our very last day, the lambs started being born, which was really special because we visited the pregnant mamas every day and they were just like so ready. And then all three of them had twins, which was so cool to get to see the brand new babies. I don't have livestock like that on my farm, so that was really special for me and for everybody. We were all just like waiting. We're like, are the babies coming? Um, and then what did we do the rest of the day? Um, I don't know. There's like all these different blocks we did. Yeah, soil science where we took different samples from all over the field. One was from like the forest, one was from the pasture that they are working on that has been fallow for many seasons, one from the vegetable fields. And so we got um to look at the soil aggregation to see, you know, to see that in real time and do a few different experiments with that, which was also really fun to see. And we had some really amazing guest speakers. I particularly loved Flora from Pie Ranch, and she talked about justice in the food system. So we had many different teachers from um, different farms from the farm we were staying on. Yeah, soil scientists, hydrologists, farmers, and food justice workers, and all of that combined it was just really enriching. And they are conversations that I have gotten to continue after as well, which I think is amazing, getting to come back and share that with my own community, have conversations with my own friends and family and coworkers, and just really important topics that I think we definitely should be talking about in our food systems. Um, and then every evening, there are at least two or three people who are on dinner prep, and so you get to go into the kitchen with the chef. Our chef at Hidden Villa was Gary, who is an incredible chef from Chez Panisse in Berkeley, and it was just so much fun. It was like hanging out with your friends in the kitchen, making a beautiful meal, serving it to everybody, and then dinner was just like this beautiful farm to table dinner every single night. We had amazing locally sourced wines and just really, I don't know, the conversations were really fun and deep and personal and inspiring. And that's really, I mean, honestly, it was like the most fun I've had in a really long time, like the best week I've had in a very long time. And yeah, I don't know. I just was really great every single day. I was excited to wake up and do the activities, and um was sad when it ended.
Thanks so much, Jess. I wanna give Megan a moment to share a little bit more about the food, the evolution of the food and cooking with resident chefs at Climate Farm School. But before I pass it to you, Megan, I want to also just say, like, my one of my favorite parts of the day, unexpectedly, has become the daily debriefs that we do at the end, and that was something that was brought off over to me from my friends and family who've worked at the Knowles, the National Outdoor Leadership School, of having a chance for the group to reflect. It's been, usually after dinner or after cleaning up, we'll go around and do a circle share with a debrief acronym called DIGA. And it's this amazing mix of like humor and like emotion and reflection and remembering the day from all the different people's in the group's perspective. And yeah, it's just such a nice feeling for me to cap things off with. And to the extent that they're full days, but there's breaks and times for side conversations. It's really nice to step back for a minute and hear about things that either stuck out for other people or you might have missed because you were taking care of some other personal need. And yeah, that's just my favorite part of this whole thing. But yeah, over to you, Megan, and we'll talk about the food a little bit, and then we'll look at some of our host farms.
Sounds good. Yeah. I think the food piece is obviously so integral because we're talking about the food system. So what does that look like in practice? And, you know, as we all go out to eat, I think there's such a detachment or misunderstanding now around how to actually cook this way. It's a fundamentally different way of cooking, which is going to the farm or going to your farmer's market and being inspired by what's in abundance and what's seasonal and what's local and regionalized to you, and then coming up with a menu versus having a recipe going to the store and feeling that you need to fit and find everything to fit that recipe. So many professional chefs don't even have an opportunity to cook this way. And so from a program perspective, it's an opportunity for line cooks, sous chefs who might not have control over their menu design at their restaurants to come in and become like really have the creative freedom to really cook in a beautiful, seasonal, and localized way. One of my favorite, some examples are in the Hudson Valley, we go to a farm called Stonehouse Grain, which produces incredible, beautiful organic grains for livestock feed, which are also very, very much human grade safe. And so what we do is we take those grains and we borrow a tabletop mill from a local baker and we freshly mill that flour. And then the next morning we'll bake sourdough pancakes with that flour. And really closing the loop from that experience from the field to your plate is one, incredibly rare and very, very special to have that conversation around it. So
Mm.
imagine that happening all the time from the vegetable production that you go out to help harvest to the livestock and dairy that you might experience at Hawthorne Valley or in different places like Piscinus that has beautiful meat product. So it really is special from not only the consumer, but also the chef and a really reinvigorating way and philosophy around cooking that I think really reconnects or really transforms the way that our minds shift around the way that we want to cook for ourselves at home. And we find that,
Mm.
as a result, participants fundamentally shift after their experience to like 100% sourcing from farmers markets. I think like 92% of our alumni recently told us in a survey that they now have told everyone how they should be sourcing their food from more localized sources that are fresh and in abundance and seasonal. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Megan. Well, so I think I'm actually going to back up for a second and take the sort of 1,000 foot view of, again, like how do we pick our host farms and why do we pursue this food and climate intersection? When I was early on in grad school, I went to a class on climate change. It was focused on energy and transportation and building systems to convert to clean energy and reduce emissions. But there was also this statistic about like food systems as a system, not just the farming and land use activities, contribute up to a third of annual total greenhouse gas emissions around the world. And I was like totally shocked and blown away because I was really thinking a lot about like, oh, we can just use solar panels or geothermal or wind energy to replace fossil energy and just plug it into the grid system and like, boom, we've reduced emissions. But with the food system, it's a huge contributor to the climate problem and it's way less talked about like how we really solve it because it's not just like replacing one input for another. Like the inputs of a regenerative, diversified farm that's sequestering carbon in the soil are currently not exactly like transferable or usable within the current food system. So it's way more of a systems shift that we need to make. And so that brings us in our curriculum and experience into sort of the systems change perspective and system change theory that's kind of woven throughout some of the discussions and then kind of applied directly in the learnings because ultimately at the highest level of systems change, it starts with changing hearts and minds. And that starts at the individual level and ripples through your networks and communities. And so the experience of going through a week, we've seen it have this transformative effect of shifting hearts and minds. People who are already maybe somewhat bought into the fact that like food systems and climate are misaligned and it's a problem, we need to solve it, but also maybe experiencing some amount of eco anxiety, climate grief, like worry, overwhelm of like, this is such a big problem. How do we contribute to it? But yeah, really getting grounded in the solutions and what it takes is both empowering and I think an enabling pathway into action. So um, that's what we feel like what that we're doing to contribute to building healthier food systems that can contribute to mitigating climate change and certainly adapting to the climate impacts we're already experiencing. And all the farms that we choose to partner with have this lens of like we are contributing to climate solutions. And also they're land-based people. So they're not always front and center in the climate solutions textbooks or courses. So that's partially why we feel like vetting and choosing these farms that are already basically doing this process of land-based climate education and just amplifying and bringing more people to them is how we go about building our host farm network. And it's been, I would say, more abundance of farms that are eager to partner and do this programming with us than we've been able to immediately like say yes to as we grow. So um, some of the farms that we are really excited to welcome you to, I'll just maybe talk through briefly our two spring course sites, Piscinas Ranch and Green Valley, and then pause so we can just take questions. But we'll send you the slides and the recording of all of this after we wrap up this morning. So here's just kind of the sampling of our farms. Our first course of the year will be at Piscinas Ranch in Piscinas, California. And it's just a totally amazing site of 7,000 acres, extensive regenerative and holistic grazing of sheep and a vineyard that's unique in the United States for being designed to be grazed by sheep year round. So not just in the winter time, but the grapes are grown higher off the ground so that sheep can graze in between the rows without disturbing the leaves and the fruit any time of year. And then Green Valley Farm and Mill, where I live and where I'm zooming in from today, is in Sonoma County. And it's our first site of hosting. It's sort of our flagship home base Climate Farm School campus. It's a diversified 172-acre farm with forest and pasture for a regenerative herd of Jersey dairy cows that are distributed through a raw milk. Their dairy products are distributed through a raw milk herd share. There's also a dry farm vineyard and a vegetable CSA, some heirloom grain, seed saving projects, and medicinal herb gardens. A lot of just kind of micro enterprises that are managed by unique farm leaseholders. And yeah, it's run as a cooperative land project. So very, very interesting place to be. And Mitch came to our program in Washington, but he's based in San Francisco and is a really wonderful alumni champion and advocate. So I will stop there. Maybe we can leave it up on this page for a second, Megan, so we can just, have the dates out there for what's coming up. And yeah, would love to take any questions and apologize if I need to head out before the very end, but Megan will help close things out because we have another talk that I'm going over to host in 7 minutes. But yeah, would love to hear your questions, comments, thoughts.
Which you all are.
I have a question. I am sorry, is somebody frozen or is it okay to
Oh, you're good.
okay. I'm curious about just kind of logistics, like cost and transportation and like how all of that stuff works. Yeah, just would be curious about how to actually like proceed with doing this.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer that one, Rebecca. So it really depends on the location that you choose. The pricing will vary based on the farm, and also the different housing types. So based on the farm, some folks offer camping, some have shared rooms, and some have private rooms. And then the price points can vary anywhere from 2,500 to 3,800 for the entire course. So that's the 2 weeks online plus the in-person for 5 days. That includes lodging and meals. The only thing it doesn't include is travel. So yeah, essentially each individual is responsible for getting themselves there in person. We usually have like a half day where everyone arrives, and then 4 to 5 full program days, and then a half morning where we kind of wrap up, do the final reflection, and then everyone can take off.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And one thing I can also flag is, I know we went through the specific host farms very quickly, but each course and the host farm that they're on are all on the website too. And each one has a sample schedule for what those 5 days will look like, and the sample like workshops and farm partners that will go and visit as well, and specific dates. So we have some of them up here on the slide, but this is a lot of information to take in. So if there's any particular location that's of interest, or as Lainey had already shared, each farm has such a different area of expertise. And so those specific host farm courses also have an introduction to who is like Spencer, who is the director at Hawthorne Valley Farm, and his background, and what does biodynamic farming mean? And that's what's special about that farm versus Piscinus versus Spinocchi in Italy, which seems to be the most popular course this year because we've already sold out of it. But yes, so if you have any curiosities around those details and the particular schedule and program for each one, because they are different, each page on the website is a very good resource. Any other questions? Kaylee, I see you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Hmm. Sorry. Do you want to put the question in the group chat? And as we're waiting for Kaylee, one thing I can flag is the upcoming event that's happening next, that Laney is hosting in partnership with Caney Fork Farm, is about food and health. So if anyone has more time, feel free to join. But it's ultimately around the intersections of food farming and health with Asher Wright from Caney Fork, a regenerative farming project in Tennessee, and the assistant professor of clinical pediatrics at Vanderbilt University. So as Lena mentioned, we do have some cohorts that are focused on healthcare professionals. And Climate Farm School has our continuing medical education accreditation from UC Berkeley as well. Okay, so Kayla, would you ever do a private session for corporate groups interested in adding it onto a conference? Definitely, yes. We've done those before. We're working on a few for later this year. So yeah, if you have an audience in mind already that might be interested in this work, we can come up with custom programming and what that might look like. We do find that usually at least 2 to 3 days together in this community setting is really integral to having that kind of mindset, transformation. But we also know that in corporate contexts, people might not have that much of time. So, and I only mention it because it's come up in conversations a few times, but the short answer is yes. Amazing. Well, with 2 minutes to spare, Lainey put our email addresses in the group chat, but please do email us if you have any other questions that come up. Everyone is already working a little bit, at the intersection of food and at the intersection of climate. And so regardless, would love to stay in touch. We have these conversations series, the event that's coming up right after this, ideally every month. So stay tuned. We have an events page on the website, and Jess, who's done a beautiful job with our Instagram page, we've been posting a lot more content there as well. But we would love to remain engaged. Sounds good. Thank you all so much for spending an hour with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Bye. All right. And for anyone who's staying on, we have a few folks that are joining us as we transition to the next program. So let me
Yeah,
stop.
Megan, I think we need to like stop the recording and then like restart it somehow. I
Yep.
feel like Ryan maybe made the Zoom links the same, which
Yes.
is
And
confusing to me.
close this
Good in
out.
some ways, bad in others.
No worries.
Um,
Close this out and then stop.